Okay. Okay, everybody, we're going to start here. Everybody should be able to see the source sheet and be able to hear me. The topic this evening is the Beit HaMikdash plague connection. There are midrashim and commentaries like the Ramban and like the Radak that explain that the 70,000 Jews fell in the last days, the last period of King David's reign. Why? Because they did not demand the Beit HaMikdash. And so I want to go over that chapter in the Tanakh, which doesn't seem to mention the Beit HaMikdash at all, and doesn't seem to mention the people died for that reason. But why do Chazal understand that to be the case? Or some of the Chazal. So that's what I want to explain to you tonight. So we start with the source sheet over here. In the Medrash, it says, all those of the population that fell, they only fell because they did not demand the building of the Beit HaMikdash. The last chapter in Shmuel Bet talks about King David. He took a census of the people. Now, you're not allowed to take a census. You're not allowed to count Jews. He did. A plague broke out. The Torah tells us that if you count the people, a plague will break out, or could break out. So therefore, and then 70,000 died in a plague. King David did a korban to a Kodesh Baruch Hu on Har HaBayit, and the plague stopped. So on the surface, it seems that there's really what we see here, that they were killed because they did not demand the Beit HaMikdash, seems difficult. So I want to go through that chapter with you and discuss it in detail, because you have to read between the lines. And that's what Chazal does. They read between the lines and then they understand. Okay, so the very first thing I want to deal with is section 1. Jews are not allowed to count Jews. And we see it says in Shemot chapter 30, I'll start with verse 11, the Lord spoke to Moses saying, verse 12, when you take the sum of the children of Israel according to their numbers, let each one give to the Lord an atonement for his soul when they are counted. Then there will be no plague among them when they are counted. So it's very clear. You count, if somebody counts the Jewish people and they don't give an atonement for their soul, and in this case they gave a half a shekel. The half a shekel was used for the mishkan or for korbanot. And therefore, that was a type of atonement. But if there is no atonement and you count Jews, it's dangerous. Continue, verse 13. Then this they shall give everyone who goes through the counting a half a shekel according to the holy shekel. 20 gerahs equal 1 shekel. Half of such a shekel shall be an offering to the Lord. Verse 14. Everyone who goes through the counting from the age of 20 and upward shall give an offering to the Lord. Verse 15, the rich shall give no more, the poor shall give no less than a half a shekel with which to give the offering to the Lord to atone for your souls. Okay, so it's pretty clear. You count the people, there is no atonement, there's no half a shekel here given. A plague, God says, will break out. Source 2, Rashi explains, then there will be no plague among them, for the evil eye has power over numbered things, and pestilence comes upon them, as we find in David's time, the second book of Shmuel, chapter 24. Now here you see Rashi goes into more explanation. You see on the side here this diagram on the right-hand side. These are the sockets on the bottom. These sockets here are what the half a shekel went for. So in the very first counting that Moshe did of the Jewish people, they gave a half a shekel. That half a shekel went towards the Mishkan, went to these sockets over here, and the boards were placed into these sockets. The second time there was a counting by Moshe Rabbeinu, the half a shekel went for korbanot. So each time you see it went to something related to the Mishkan, and that provided atonement for the Jewish people. Now, let's go through this chapter, chapter 24, the last chapter in Shmuel. And I want to point out as we go through it some of the problems or problematic pasukim in this chapter. Okay, section 2. Thousands fell by a plague in the days of King David. Pasuk 1. And again, the anger of the Lord was kindled against Israel, and he incited David against them, saying, go count Israel and Judah. Okay, so first of all, it says God was angry. Even before the plague, God was angry. What was God angry about? Okay, Rashi over here says, against Israel, I do not know regarding what. Rashi says on this pasuk, I don't know why God's angry. But here we clearly see that God's angry. Not only is God angry, but God is angry again. Something is happening that angers God. Rashi says, I don't know what it is. And what does he do? He incites David, he uses the word vayaset from the word hasata. He incites David to go count the people. Also a little bit problematic. Why is he inciting David to do something that's not proper? Verse 2. And David said to Yoav, Yoav was the chief of staff, the captain of the host that was with him, go please to and fro throughout all the tribes of Israel, from Dan as far as Beersheba, and take census of the people, so that I may know the number of the people. Well, David, he's the king. He gives the order. Not only is he king, he's a Talmid Chacham, and he's very high level Talmid Chacham. And he says, go count the people. Yoav, the chief of staff, listens, here's the order. And he tries to get out of it. He doesn't want to do it. He knows it's a problem. Verse 3, and Yoav said to the king, may the Lord your God add to the people 100-fold of whatsoever they may be, and the eyes of my Lord the king may see it. But my Lord the king, why does he desire such a thing? Yoav says, listen, in your lifetime, there should be 100 times more people, but please, why do you want to do such a thing? Why do you want to count the people? Because he knows it's a problem. The Gemara says even a child in yeshiva ketana knows there's a problem in counting the people. Today, when you want to count Jews for a minyan, you don't count 1, 2, 3, 4. We say a pasuk with 10 words in it because we don't want to count the people. Everybody knows you don't count the people. 4. Verse 4. But the word of the king prevailed against Yoav and against the captains of the host. And Yoav and the captains of the host went out from the presence of the king to number the people, the Israelites. When the king wants something, he usually wins. And that's what happened here. He pressured Yoav. Yoav tried to get out of it. He tried to explain to the king why no, but the king was insistent. 5. Okay, we're going to skip 5 and 6 and 7. We'll go to number 8. Those psukim just explained that Yoav did what he was told, and he went out and counted the people. 8. And they had gone to and fro throughout the entire land, and they came at the end of 9 months and 20 days back to Jerusalem. That's how long it took to count all the Jews, 9 months, 20 days. 9. And Yoav presented the sum of the number of the people to the king, and Israel consisted of 800,000 valiant men that drew the sword, and the men of Judah were 500,000 men. So he finally came and gave him the number. Verse 10, and then David had pangs of conscience. He realized he did something wrong. And verse 10, and David's heart smote him after he had counted the people. And David said to the Lord, I have sinned greatly in what I have done. And now, O Lord, put aside, please, the iniquity of your servant, for I was very foolish. David, being a tzaddik that he was, God immediately comes and answers and relates to his request. 11. And David rose up in the morning, and the word of the Lord came to God, the prophet, the seer of David, saying. So what did the prophet tell him? Or what did God say to the prophet? 12. Go and speak to David. So says the Lord. 3 things I offer you. Choose one for yourself, and one of them, and I shall do it for you. So David now is given 3 choices. You can have this punishment A, punishment C, or punishment, A, B, or C. You can have one of 3. Choose what you want. What were the 3 choices? Verse 13. And God came to David and he told him, and he said to him, do you prefer that 7 years of famine in your land shall come upon you? So the first choice was famine, 7 years. Second choice, or 3 months that you shall flee before your oppressors while he pursues you. Or you can have the enemy in battle running after you, pursuing you for 3 months. The third option, or that there be 3 days of pestilence in your land. A plague. You want a plague? Okay, that's your thing. Now, know and consider what I shall reply to him that sent me. So God asked David, listen, tell me what you want. I'll go tell Hashem. What does David do? He chooses the plague. This is a pasuk we say every day, Tachnun. I'll read it in Hebrew first. Vayomer David el Gad. Sar li ma'od. David said to God, I am greatly oppressed. Nipla na biyad Adonai. Let us fall now into the hand of the Lord. Ki rabim rachamav, because his mercies are great. Ubiyad adam ala polo. And in the hand of man, let me not fall. So how do we know that's the plague? Well, that's what happened. The plague came. But what David was saying, listen, I don't want to be under the Goyim. Please don't put me under the Goyim. I want to only be in your hands, Hashem. If there was a famine, they would have to leave the land and go and rely on non-Jews for food. Similarly, when Yaakov Avinu was living in Eretz Yisrael, there was a famine in the land. There was no food. What did he have to do? He had to send his sons to Mitzrayim to get food. David did not want to be in that position. Second, he didn't want to be in a war where he was losing for 3 months. Again, he's under the hands of the non-Jew. And he doesn't, and once the non-Jew has some power over the Jew, he has a certain leeway to cause damage. So he asked for pestilence, 15. So the Lord sent a pestilence upon Israel from the morning until the appointed time. And there died of the people from Dan to Beersheba 70,000 men. This pestilence was supposed to last for 3 days, but it didn't last for 3 days. Some say it lasted only a half a day. Some say it lasted an hour because David was praying. And Hashem was Rachamim, was merciful. So, but nevertheless, 70,000 died in that plague. 16. And the angel stretched out his hand toward Jerusalem to destroy it. And the Lord regretted the evil. And he said to the angel that destroyed among the people, it's enough. Now stay your hand. And the angel of the Lord was by the threshing floor of Arabna the Jebusite. This angel, Hashem stopped him, froze him in place, and he was right at the point where the Mizbeach would be in the Beit HaMikdash. 17. And David said to the Lord, when he saw the angel that smote among the people, and he said, behold, I have sinned and I have acted iniquitously. But these sheep, the Jewish people, what have they done? I beg that your hand be against me and against my father's house. But I sinned, David said. I'm the one who counted the people. Why are you punishing the Jewish people? That's another question we have, right? Why should 70,000 Jews die when David is the one who sinned? Doesn't seem fair. On top of that, God incited David to do it. The answer, and God came to David on that day and said to him, go up to erect an altar to the Lord in the threshing floor of Aravna the Jebusite. So immediately God says to him, he answered his prayer, and he said, go make an altar over there on that spot. And that's what happened. And what happened? I have just a few minutes here. I should have more, really. David then goes to Aravna, purchases his property, which is Harabayit, and sacrifices there on that spot where he's told to, and the plague stops. Let's go verse 22. And Aravna said to David, let my lord the king take and offer up what seems good in his eyes. Behold, the oxen, the burnt offering, the threshing tools, the wooden tools of the oxen for firewood. Aravna, who owned the property, he was a Ger Toshav, he was a righteous Gentile. He later converted, according to many, and he sold the property. He wanted to give everything to David, stop this plague, right? But David said, no, I need to buy it. I don't want any gifts. 23, all this Aravna the king gave to the king. And Aravna said to the king, may the Lord your God accept you. 24, and the king said to Aravna, no, for I will only buy it from you at a price, so that I will not offer to the Lord my God burnt offerings which I have received for nothing. And David bought the threshing floor and the oxen for 50 shekels of silver. Chazal tells us it was 50 shekels from each tribe. So 50 times 12 is 600 shekels. That's what it cost David. 25, and this is a very important pasuk. And David built there an altar to the Lord, and he offered up burnt offerings and peace offerings. And the Lord was entreated for the land, and the plague was stopped from on Israel. As soon as David built the altar there, sacrificed the offerings, immediately the plague stopped. From here, you want to learn something. You want to learn, like, if what stopped the plague was building the altar there and doing the sacrifices, maybe that has something to do with the punishment, the reason for the punishment. But on the surface right now, and I think this meeting is going to be up soon. Oh yeah, I got 5 minutes to go for some reason. Okay. Now let's look at this chapter again. If you look at this chapter, on the surface, it seems, number one, David counted the people. He was punished. A plague broke out, just like it says in the Torah what would happen if you count the people without atonement. David makes a sacrifice, and the plague stops. So on the surface, what does this have to do with the people not wanting a Beit HaMikdash? Okay. The plague was stopped. Now, we see another time in the Torah it says the plague was stopped. Let's read it together. Pinchas, if you remember, Zimri, the head of the tribe of Shimon, took Cosby, a non-Jewish woman, and in public brought her into the tent to have relations with her, and a plague broke out. And what stopped the plague? Pinchas, when he speared the two of them, the plague stopped. Let's see it. Verse 7 on chapter 25 of Numbers. And when Pinchas, the son of Eleazar, the son of Aaron, the priest, saw it, he rose from the congregation and took a spear in his hand. He went after the Israelite man into the chamber and drove it through both of them, the Israelite man and the woman through her stomach. And the plague was stopped from the children of Israel. So here's like a hint. It's very clear from this passage that that act stopped the plague. Right? If you want to stop the plague, how is the plague stopped? Prayer sometimes is not enough. You have to do some type of action. And in this case, the spearing was the action and the plague stopped. The question over here in our chapter, why was the plague stopped when he built that altar and he sacrificed that animals? If it was just a korban, he should have gone to the mishkan. In those days, there was a mishkan. From the time Yehoshua came into the land, we had a mishkan in Gilgal first, and then it went to Shiloh, and then it went to Givon, and then it went to Nov. And in the days of David, the mishkan was in Nov. If you want to sacrifice, you could go to Nov and sacrifice. But here, this wasn't a normal sacrifice. This was a sacrifice on a specific point on Har Bayit. And that stopped the plague. So keep that in mind. We're going to end soon here. Tomorrow, we're going to pick up again at 8 o'clock. And maybe because I started the meeting earlier to get in, I have less time. Your Zoom allows you 40 minutes. So I might have used it up. I'm going to come into the meeting a few minutes before.
Yes, you used it up. It's 40 minutes from when you start.
40 minutes from when I start. Okay, fine. So tomorrow, let's continue. Tomorrow, I'm going to go through the 3 midrashim that say the reason that the people were punished was because they didn't want a Beit HaMikdash. We have to understand that. Then we'll go through the Ramban, who explains it in detail. The Ramban is very interesting because he says, listen, you don't need midrashim. This is really, you can understand that the Jewish people were punished out of logic. It's logical they were punished because they did not want a Beit HaMikdash. It's logical. So that's also very interesting to go through, and that we're going to do tomorrow.
Don't start your camera until 2 minutes to 8.
Okay,
you'll get 40 minutes.
Okay. Anybody has any questions so far, please email me, and I will answer you on Zoom tomorrow or by email. And I thank you very much. This is my first time, and it's a little bit confusing for me. So I appreciate your patience, and we'll see you tomorrow, God willing.